So, from the blaze, leftist media outlets attack Sound of Freedom movie, claiming anti-child trafficking film is QAnon fantasy for the conspiracy-addled boomer. Now, first of all, I don't know that I qualify as a boomer. I don't think so. I mean, maybe. Maybe just barely. I think the boomer qualification, though, was a few years before I was born. I'm getting up there, though, so maybe I qualify as a boomer. I don't know. But anyway, before I get into this story, from the conspiracy-addled Zoomer media that pushed the Russian conspiracy hoax for 6 years and still is in some cases, I'd like to ask those of you out there that like and appreciate the raw, red-pill nature of my content to go check out my BitChute channel. The Realist Philosopher. So, bitchute.com/The Realist Philosopher. A lot of red pills, lots of yummy, juicy, tasty, informative red pills there. For those of you out there that like the truth, delivered to you in an honest way that is brutally honest, in fact, riddled with philosophy and comedy, all mixed into one. I think you'd enjoy it very much, meaning most men that are still men and haven't been estrogenized will like my channel very much. So go check it out, The Realist Philosopher at BitChute. So bitchute.com/The Realist Philosopher. That's bitchute.com/The Realist Philosopher. Go take a look. Okay, so several leftist media outlets have slammed the new Sound of Freedom movie, claiming the anti-child trafficking film is QAnon fantasy for the conspiracy-addled boomer. Why do they have a problem with this movie, huh? By the way, why do you think these people have a problem with an anti-child trafficking film? And I think the reason is simple. I think the reason that they're attacking this movie is simple. They want to poison the well. They want to make you take this movie less seriously. And of course, notice that the people associating this with QAnon say nothing about how it's actually a QAnon conspiracy. They say, oh, well, it's QAnon conspiracy-addled nonsense for the conspiracy-addled boomer. By the way, is it mostly boomers that have so-called conspiracy theories? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's why the left hates old people so much. I don't know. No, it's because they have all the wealth! Oh, is that why? Yeah, because all these young people are a bunch of socialists, I see. Yeah. These old people, they've accumulated all the wealth. They've stolen it because it's a zero-sum game, don't you know? But anyway, it's QAnon conspiracy theory, yeah. As if child trafficking were a conspiracy theory. I mean, we know this is a real thing, so I guess they're arguing about, I don't know, severity of the problem? I mean, which is it? Is it QAnon conspiracy? Or is it just a little bit conspiratorial? Insofar as they're making it seem like it's a bigger problem than it actually is. I mean, by the way, how can it only be a little conspiratorial? There's a conspiracy to make a problem that actually has been proven to exist seem more serious than it actually is? Is that what they're saying? By the way, it's just a movie. Why are you taking it so seriously? Huh? Lefties, why do you care? Why do you care? That's what you're always telling us. Why do you care if we're race swapping and gender swapping these characters at movies? I don't know. You seem to care a hell of a lot. Why do you care so much? By the way, what's the conspiracy? To make you concerned about child trafficking? To get you to believe that child trafficking is more of an issue than it actually is? And how could that be a bad thing, by the way? I mean, it would make you more serious about tackling the issue of child trafficking, which is essentially slavery, which these people supposedly care so much about. Well, we only care about it when it's 150 years ago. We don't care about actual slavery in the here and now. So what is it? Is it a conspiracy theory? Huh? Or is it not? It can't be a conspiracy theory, but not a conspiracy theory. I mean, I would think a conspiracy theory is like, it's not actually happening. It's not real. It's not true. But child trafficking does happen. It is a real problem. I mean, what's the conspiracy? That the movie's trying to get you to believe it's a bigger issue than it actually is? I can't imagine how that would be a bad thing, by the way. But anyway, the official synopsis of Sound of Freedom is this. It's based on an incredible true story. Is that the part that they object to? and it shines a light on even the darkest of places. After rescuing a young boy from ruthless child traffickers, a federal agent learns the boy's sister is still captive and decides to embark on a dangerous mission to save her. Sounds cool already. Sign me up. I want to go see it. Maybe I should go see it. I haven't been to a movie theater, though, in like fucking 20 years. I just watch shit on my computer now. Don't ask how. I just do. I refuse to pay for this stuff, but I might actually go and pay for this movie. Sounds pretty good. And I support the mission. Even if it's not as big a problem. By the way, are they telling us what the metrics are for deciding how big a problem it is? I mean, what's their metric? I mean, how is this movie overrepresenting the problem? It's saying this is a problem. I mean, where in the movie is it saying it's huge, it's this number of kids every year, and that's statistically false, so we can point to that metric and say, oh, you overblown it because you quoted a figure that we can prove is false. I mean, where are they getting this overblowing the issue thing that makes it some kind of conspiracy theory? Because we know it's not a conspiracy theory insofar as it not happening, because it does happen. I don't know. All right, let me continue here. So anyway, it continues by saying, with time running out, he quits his job and journeys deep into the Colombian jungle, putting his life on the line to free her from a fate worse than death. Sound of Freedom was written and directed by Mexican director Alejandro Monteverde and produced by Mexican producer Eduardo Verastegui. I probably butchered that. The movie features the Passion of the Christ star Jim Caviezel. I like him. I didn't like that movie so much, the Passion of the Christ. There's too much gratuitous violence. But anyway, and Academy Award winner Mira Sorvino. Okay. Filming for Sound of Freedom ended in 2018. 2018? This movie wrapped 5 years ago? What the fuck? Why did it take so... I think I know why it took so long to get on screen. Here we go. Here we go. It had a distribution deal with 20th Century Fox. However, the movie was shelved. Oh, imagine that. After the Walt Disney Company acquired 20th Century Fox. Aha! Disney shelved it. Disney released the rights to the movie, and it was scooped up by Angel Studios. It's very interesting. So Disney didn't want this circulating in 2018. No, we can't have you knowing about real problems in the world. We got to push our fake problems on you. Keep you distracted, you dumb lemmings. So Sound of Freedom, with a budget of $14.5 million? Jesus Christ. I guess Jim Caviezel took a pay cut, or maybe he agreed to do the movie for a very small amount and then maybe a bit on the back end. Wow. I mean, how can it not make money with this kind of budget? I mean, unless it's poor quality like the fucking Swamp Thing from the late 1980s or some shit, how can you lose? And it outperformed Disney's highly promoted Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I mean, the Dial of Feminism? Yeah. Which cost $300 million. They're telling you it cost $300, which means it actually cost $4, and that doesn't, of course, include the marketing, which is probably going to double that figure. At the 4th of July box office, well, hooray, hurrah, good. Seems like people are getting tired of the woke crap. Of course, that doesn't mean they're going to stop pushing it on you. Despite the stunning success of the Underdog movie about human trafficking that was written and directed by a Mexican director. I thought that the libtards are supposed to be all for that, the diversity and all that. Only if it aligns with the message. Liberal outlets trash Sound of Freedom as a QAnon fantasy. What? Aren't they the ones always saying that we can take liberty and license with movies even if they're supposed to be based on a true story because it's still just a movie? Anyway, why? Why are they calling it a QAnon fantasy? Firstly, we know child trafficking is a real issue. We know it. Just as we know there's 3 to 6 million slaves, actual cotton-picking, sex-giving, laboring tirelessly slaves of the type that the left claims to hate so much, that are right now living and toiling in Africa. Real slaves. Non-existent slaves, because they're focused mainly on people that were slaves 150 years ago in America, and those people are all dead. But they care more about the dead people than the living ones. Anyway, is that a QAnon fantasy, people? 3 to 6 million slaves in Africa right now? I suppose it is, since you never hear about it. And that's by design. If a tree falls in the forest and nobody's around to hear or see it fall, did it really fall? Apparently not. So the same way that slavery still exists in the world, but on a grander scale in some places than it ever did in the past, does human trafficking of children not also exist? Sure. Apparently, though, it's not on as grand a scale as the movie supposedly purports. And by the way, I'm looking at this synopsis. I haven't seen anything about how it purports it to be a bigger problem than it actually is. It seems big. It's in the movies so much. Motherfuckers, that's what the movie's about. No shit, it's in the movie a lot. The movie's about that. Ay, ay, ay. Anyway, at least that's the inference, that the movie is making it a much bigger issue than it actually is. Yeah. Which they're saying it's not that big a problem, globally speaking. Because if it was a real problem in the world, and on the kind of scale that they claim the movie implies, or that we're supposed to infer is the case, then why hasn't the noble left been talking about it? Why don't we hear about this? I mean, the noble left that cares so much about slavery and the oppressed, well, who's more oppressed than slaves? Especially, a lot of the times non-white people. Non-white people, Americans, what are we, 5% of the world's population? And whitey is not the majority of the population. The majority of the Earth's population is somebody other than white people. So the majority of slaves in the world, sex slaves, trafficked people, would be non-white people, which the left seems to care a hell of a lot about because they're all oppressed. Since they're not white. But white people can't be oppressed. But we don't give a fuck because it's not a real problem. Because, if it was a real problem and we didn't give a fuck, well, then that would make us look like the hypocrites and the fakes and the phonies and the frauds we actually are. And if it was a real problem, then why aren't we doing anything about it, right? And since we're not doing anything about it, it clearly isn't a problem of note. And in turn, it's got to be a QAnon fantasy, right? Yeah. Anyway, Rolling Stone published an article with Sound of Freedom is a superhero movie for dads with brain worms. Okay. With the sub-headline reading, the QAnon-tinged thriller about child trafficking is designed to appeal to the conscience of a conspiracy-addled boomer. We heard that already. Now, the brainworm part, okay, that's no. Rolling Stone, huh? Yeah, that's a lefty libtard outlet now, wouldn't it? By the way, notice the false framing. Dads with brainworms, meaning dads concerned with protecting their kids have brainworms. Yeah. So wanting to protect your kids means you have brainworms. Wanting to protect your kids from very real threats in the world means you have brainworms. Didn't you know that, boomer? You got brainworms. If you care about your kids. Oh, yeah, meaning that those people on the left don't care nearly as much about their kids. In the end, the association, the powers that be, want is dads with brainworms. If you in any way, shape, or form believe that child trafficking is a big problem, yeah. Conspiracy-addled boomer. Ooh, conspiracy-addled boomer. So any boomer that wants to protect their kids is conspiracy-addled. Oh, yeah, well, what are you concerned about? America's real safe. It's so safe. It's safer than it's ever been. And if there are any bad guys out there, it's because they're guys, because women don't do nothing wrong, don't you know? The only reason evil exists in the world is because of evil men and toxic masculinity, and we just need to socially engineer that out of people. Oh, okay. But wouldn't that mean there's still evil in the world, even if we subscribe to that theory? So you got to protect your kids? No! You're a conspiracy-addled boomer with brainworms. Yeah, you're not right in the head. You're delusional. You're demented. And why not? I mean, boomers are old after all, right? I'm old. And old equals addled and not right in the head. And, you're prone to believe in nonsense and conspiracies. So don't listen to those boomers. Why would you even want to listen to them? You're not going to find any truth in the minds and words of old people. They're conspiracy-addled. Boomer. All right, boomer. Yeah, dads equal boomers, huh? Really? Okay. By the way, if you're a boomer and you got kids, they're probably grown up by now. Not that you still don't worry about them, but anyway. So words synonymous with jokes in today's day and age. Dad and boomer, right? Because, dad is a joke these days. Men are seen as a joke. Fathers are seen as jokes. Yeah, dads are bumbling fools, didn't you know? They're bumbling idiots. They're all like Homer Simpson. They're not important. We don't need them. We especially don't need them to protect children, right? Women can do that just fine. Yeah. By the way, what do we need to protect them from anyway? The state? Child traffickers? No. Child trafficking isn't a problem. And the state's never been a threat to its own people ever in the history of mankind. Didn't you know that? The state's your friend. And so are child traffickers, apparently. Oh, they don't even exist. It's conspiracy. And you should let the state raise your kids while you go out and produce like the good little tax chattel that you are and be a good little worker bee. Yeah. No. Dads are required. But that's a silly notion, right? That you need dads? No. Now moms rule the world. It's all about female power, girl boss. Yeah. And boomers, of course, they're also a joke, right? Shouldn't take boomers seriously. Yeah, you all remember that. Okay, boomer. That trend. It's still popular now. Okay, boomer. Yeah. Of course, because when you're older and possess more life experience and in turn have more wisdom, you're someone that shouldn't be listened to or respected or even taken seriously. You're just a joke because you're still alive and you managed to survive after all these years. You made it to 70, 80, 90, or 100 years old in a world where there's fucking meteorites falling out of the fucking sky, cars zooming down the road with drunk drivers, jumping up on the sidewalks and killing people, robbers, rapists, wars, pestilence, disease. And you survived it all. Oh, but we shouldn't listen to you. You don't have any lessons to teach us. Okay, boomer. Okay. No, instead you need to be mocked and ridiculed and blamed for the world's problems because you're a boomer, and particularly so if you're a white boomer. Hell yeah. It makes you evil. Yeah. If you weren't classified as all these horrible, evil things, people might listen to you. And God forbid anyone take men, especially fathers or old people, seriously. Oh, no. You know, the people who have the biggest incentive to protect, meaning fathers, and the biggest incentive to educate in the form of elderly people. Yeah. That would be a good idea, by the way. Like automatically give somebody over a certain age a teaching certificate if they pass a test. Like, make a life test, right? And, test their skills. And if this old person is really good at like math or science or English or philosophy or something, if they're over a certain age, they could teach. Wouldn't that be great? No, kids might actually learn something then. We're spreading these false narratives about child trafficking. Don't listen to them. Don't pay attention to pesky child trafficking. That's QAnon fantasy nonsense. It'll take your focus off the world's real problems, like global warming that we now call climate change because the warming isn't actually happening anymore and really never was. So we renamed it into something nebulous and amorphous in nature. Anyway, the author accuses the author of this Rolling Stone article, of fomenting moral panic for years over this grossly exaggerated epidemic. Oh, there's no epidemic of child sex trafficking, much of it funneling people into conspiracist rabbit holes and QAnon communities. I don't get this. Anyhow, so finally, halfway into the article, they get into the specifics of how it's supposedly a QAnon conspiracy. Oh, yeah. Not that it doesn't happen, but it doesn't happen on the scale the movie claims. Does the movie ever claim a particular scale? Has there been some metric set up that, okay, this level is a real problem, but this level isn't really a big deal? I don't think so. Anyhow, any evidence for it being a big problem or not being a big problem presented by the all-knowing media? No. Of course not. They have no evidence for any of these claims. Also, if it happens, then how is it a conspiracy? Oh, it's just not a big enough problem because the media says so. Yeah, because we should listen to them, right? By the way, could the media please tell me what the numbers have to be for something to be a problem? I mean, they've ignored the issue up until now while talking about the Trump-Russia conspiracy and how Trump was an agent for Russia all those years. And that's been proven to be totally, completely false. Are they, self-castigating themselves? Are they flagellating themselves over that fuck up? Nah. This actual conspiracy theory that they've pushed for 6, 7, 8 years, but never actually happened, and we have evidence that it didn't happen? Of course not. I wonder if the media and the moralists on the left who are constantly going on about how virtuous they are. I wonder if the reason they're panning this movie and the issue it addresses is simply because it's an issue they themselves haven't addressed. Could it be that they, the morally superior left, the self-appointed moral arbitrators of the world who know everything about what's virtuous, could it be that they're running interference for themselves as a whole to obfuscate the fact that it's actually a huge issue, but they've just never championed it? Which totally 100% contradicts their messaging as being the morally superior group. Could it also be that they don't want you knowing about real world problems, because if you did, then you might actually work to fix those problems, and in working to fix those problems and putting your efforts into these issues, well, that might actually create unity where they want strife and division. Anyway, the author slams Sound of Freedom for presenting a hackneyed white savior narrative. But didn't this actually happen? I mean, he actually is a white savior, right? I mean, the movie is telling you stuff that happened. I mean, there might be some points throughout the movie where there's some exaggeration and such, because, you know, it's a movie. It's got to be made entertaining, where some stuff might be played up, but isn't the guy white in the movie? Isn't the person that's being portrayed white? I wonder if they would be so angry if it had been a black dude. If they had race swapped the main character, who in real life is white, with a black guy. No, they'd still be upset. They want the truth getting out there about real world problems. Anyway, I find this to be a false framing attempt and ideological projection. After all, you can't have anyone else out there presuming that they can save the world, that they have some kind of moral compass, or can save anyone for that matter. Oh no, that's the left's job, right? All the special, wonderful, brilliant, empathetic artists that they are, yeah, as they see themselves as the saviors of humanity, and nobody else can be your savior except them. But they can save the world, yeah. And you can save the world too if you embrace LGBTQism, whatever bullshit they're pushing. Yeah, then you can save the world. You see, saving the world, well, if you believe in their narrative, it's pushing climate change and trying to stop cows from farting. But addressing child trafficking, that's a misallocation of resources. I mean, after all, it's just a few kids, right? It's a few dozen kids, a few hundred, a few thousand, a few 100,000, a few million. But that's small potatoes compared to what the left is saving, right? They're talking about saving billions of people. The whole fucking world. Not just people, but the lions and tigers and the bears. Oh my. Yeah. All you're talking about is some petty millions, even tens of millions. It's not as big a problem as climate change, so you need to ignore that, okay? No. We can't do both. Oh, and in many cases, these people aren't even dying, don't you know? They're just being slaves. Maybe they're well-treated slaves. Who are you to say, right? Meanwhile, we on the left, we're talking about saving billions of people. And the dogs and the cats. See, that's okay. That's okay. That's the right path to take. Yeah. By the way, most of these people are vegans. Yeah. But saving kids and recognizing that as a problem, if we put resources to that, we can't save the planet. Really? Yeah. Oh, and of course, focusing on real problems, yeah. That'll make you ignore the fake ones that they gin up to control you and keep you afraid. Anyhow, the author of this article attempts to argue that there are worse social issues that should have higher priority than child trafficking. I called it. See, I called it. I don't read these articles beforehand. I called it. It's very obvious, yeah. I love it. Oh, I didn't read it, but I could steelman these people so very fucking well. It's so easy to hone in on their actual justifications for discounting what is a very real global issue. Well, you know, it's a problem, but not big enough when compared to the end of the world. Yeah. That's their red herring they're always pushing, all right? I guess by that framing, nothing else is really a problem. Starvation, slavery, child labor, sex trafficking. I mean, we should ignore all these problems, right? Because they're not going to lead to the end of the world. We could argue that, by the way. Certainly going to lead to the end of the civilized world. Anyway, I suppose if your metric is, that it's not a big problem if you compare it to the end of the world, then yeah, most everything else pales in comparison. After all, who cares about starvation, sex trafficking when the world's going to end? I mean, if that happens, these other things are non-issues, right? So until the end of the world is solved, everything else has to be put on the back burner. Has to be put on that back burner. Unless, of course, it's something that has to do with gay people and trannies and pedos. I don't know what the hell these things have to do with the end of the world via climate change. Oh, they're marginalized groups. Well, wait a second. Aren't kids that are trafficked also a marginalized group? Don't think about it. Don't engage your brain. We global elites and academia and the government will think for you. You just go out and work and earn that taxes, so it can steal your money to fund this bullshit. Yeah, and to buy our caviar and our private jets. They create more carbon in a day than you will in a year. Anyway, the article goes on to say there is visible suffering all around us in America. There are poor and unhoused, and people brutalized or killed by the police. Unhoused. You mean homeless people? By the way, aren't the majority of homeless, last I checked, drug addicts? People who are homeless via their own choices? Or mentally ill veterans who could get help if the VA wasn't such a disaster? They're not dying. They're not being molested. Although a lot of these people who are, homeless have been molested and trafficked. But we don't want to talk about that. We just want to keep them homeless and buy them tents and shit so we can justify our, jobs and social work and the cottage industry that we've created so we can feel morally virtuous and superior to you evil right-wingers. There's mass shootings. Lack of health care, climate disasters, and yet over and over the far right turns to these sordid fantasies about godless monsters hurting children. Doesn't this happen a lot? What do you mean fantasies? How is it a fantasy if it's a real problem? By the way, I don't get this. So, is this all or nothing dichotomy? Like either you focus on the problems that we tell you are real problems. And by the way, aren't they saying here that... I don't get this. You need to be concerned about homelessness and mass shootings, but you don't need to be concerned about child trafficking. I thought you just said before that this keeps people's focus off of the real problem, which is the end of the world via climate change, so we really shouldn't worry about any of these other issues until we fix that one. Well, wouldn't that include the issues that you're promoting here? Shut up, bigot! Climate denier! We're allowed to care about other things besides climate change. You're not! I see. Anyway, yeah. All these problems listed above are problems that exist, but they're all problems that exist in large part because of the left. This is more projection porn, isn't it? Notice climate is one of the major issues, but beneath that you've got the poor, the unhoused. And notice all these issues are divisive. They don't create unity. They're fine with pushing problems and telling you that you need to worry about things that divide us. But anything that could unify us, like child trafficking, because everybody has kids or can have kids, and it doesn't matter what race or sex or gender they are, we all care about that issue, so that would bring us together. So that's a problem that is verboten, right? Can't talk about that. Yeah, none of these issues are ones that bridge race, creed, and gender. Notice that what are these problems? Problems largely inflated and created by the left's own altruistic, oppressor versus oppressed ideology. Notice none of them create unity or focus us on anything that's universal. Yeah, it's all based on class and identity and socioeconomic grouping of people. It's all about focusing on the non-issues to the exclusion of actual issues. Yeah. The very thing that the left says this movie is doing. The Guardian featured a headline that reads, Sound of Freedom, the QAnon-adjacent thriller seducing America. Yeah, it's seducing America with its evil lies because that's how we seduce people, we conservatives. Notice all the language in this article is focused on undermining the movie. And it's trying to portray it as it's overblown and fiction. The author claims The Sound of Freedom was funded by an unsavory network of astroturf boosterism. A lot of buzzwords here. Among the far-right fringe, a constellation of paranoids. Now attempting to spin a cause out of a movie with vaguely simpatico leanings. Yeah. The buzzwords. Good Lord. AstroTurf. What astroturfing is basically when you're buying off people to pretend that they support something they don't. So essentially what the author of this article is saying is that the majority of the support for this movie that it's getting is just people that have been bought off somehow. Really? Hasn't the movie gotten like $60 million now to date? It's made like 4 times more money than it cost to make. Are you telling me that some weird shadow cabal on the right has paid, how many millions of people would it take? I guess 3-4 million people, because movie tickets are a lot now. 3-4-5 million people. Is it $15 now to go to see a movie? So you're telling me some weird shadow cabal is underneath everybody's radar, paid off 5 million people to pretend they support something they don't? I mean, are all the positive comments online about how good the movie is, it's just bots? And people being bribed in some way? What a bunch of bullshit. This is just projection. This is projection from the left. This is what they actually do. They buy off critics by giving them early, unfettered access to films, by giving them gift bags, to say that this crap or that crap is good. I mean, did the critics love She-Hulk? Which was an unmitigated disaster. Now, what far-right fringe? This is just an attempt to poison the well, like calling people Nazis or KKK. Just an ad hominem attack. Constellation of paranoids. Yeah, because child trafficking is not a real thing. As for attempting to spin a cause, again, isn't that what the left uses movies for? You know what I see here? I see, it seems like it's almost as if the left is angry that a movie has been created that has a strong male lead, strong male white lead at that. And the movie not only contains no woke messaging, but it focuses on real world problems that appeal mainly to the male desire to protect, which the left has been spending 30-40 years on deconstructing. It's almost as if those on the left who are attacking this movie are angry that their main Trojan horse, or one of their Trojan horses for delivering their narrative, the ideological delivery of the message has been co-opted by the right and used in the same way that they themselves co-opted it years ago to deliver their message. No, can't have that. Can't use our methods against us. You're QAnon boomers. Support conspiracy theories. So the author says the movie oozes eardrum perforating frequency of QAnon. Boy, notice how they're really hammering home this QAnon thing, right? They want you to associate any talk about child trafficking with conspiracy theories and white supremacy, no doubt, as well. How the fuck does child trafficking have anything to do with white supremacy, by the way? Anyway, the publication Jezebel, the leftist website for women, Jesus, ran with the headline, Sound of Freedom is an anti-child trafficking fantasy fit for QAnon. Yeah. But it's happening, right? I don't know how it's a fantasy. I don't understand this. How is it a fantasy when it's a real problem? Oh, Jezebel. Leftist, feminist rag. Yeah. We got to stay focused on the oppression of women, don't you know? Or the supposed oppression of women. You can't have any of the spotlight stolen away from these poor, helpless women and given to little kiddies. Yeah. It falls in line with the left pretty well. They seem to hate kids. Especially since most of these kids are male. Oh, no! I don't know if that's true, by the way. It's probably an even mix, girls and boys, but anyway. Since at least 50% probably, a lot of degenerates come out there that don't care if they're, hammering on a boy or a girl. They both get holes! Anyway, you gotta stay focused on the full-grown Western woman who possesses more privilege than the men they claim are oppressing them. Privilege, by the way, they can only possess if men allow them to possess it, which we do. Idiotically. Anyway, the article states at last, QAnon's camp appeal gets the cinematic exploration it demands. I don't understand this. The Jezebel writer admits that she was entertained in some way by the movie, but suggested the film is it's propaganda. Meanwhile, that Barbie movie and all these other movies made that have this pro-female, anti-male propaganda, I would call that being pushed. And this idea that women are oppressed, oh, well, that's real. That's not propaganda at all. So, right here, they're allowing their true colors to show. Anything that'll take attention away from them and in turn lose them their victim power, it's a threat. And therefore propaganda. Right? Just like the fake narratives that peddle about women and minority groups being the victims of cis white males because, well, my reasons. To them, everyone's attempting to use any and all outlets for one purpose: to grab power. Right. This is like how the liar thinks everybody else lies because they lie, and the cheater thinks everybody else is a cheater because they're a cheater. It's just projection. Right? They ascribe to other people the same motives that they themselves have, which is to grab power. Because power is all that matters to these people. When it comes to statements about what's true and factual, well, you know, the victor decides what's true and factual. And how dare you try to steal our power and ability to label what is true as true and what is false as false. Only we get to have the power to decide what's true, not you scum on the right. Jezebel is owned by Geo Media, a leftist digital media company that recently started publishing error-filled articles written by artificial intelligence bots. Oh, lovely. But you see, they're in control of the media, so whatever they say is true. Well, at least in their minds. Remember, the will to power, baby! Yeah, all these people are Nietzsche followers. Anyway, the Washington Post noted that Caviezel has openly embraced QAnon ideas. Really? How so? Oh, they're not going to tell you. Anyway, this is just an attempt to create guilt by association in the loosest sense. So basically, if anything is talked about on QAnon, it's wrong, regardless of whether or not it's actually right, objectively. And if I discuss anything that someone else discussed on QAnon, it doesn't matter what I'm saying, I'm also incorrect. That's interesting logic. I should say non-logic. Anyway, the outlet confessed that Sound of Freedom doesn't depict anything close to QAnon conspiracy theories. But they said earlier in the article it does. And added the film's villains are common criminals, not the shadowy cabal of occultists imagined by QAnoners. Yeah. So how's this movie overblowing anything? I mean, we got self-contradiction here within the exact same article. Is anybody surprised by that? The U.S. State Department states that 27.6 million people could be victims of human trafficking at any given time. $27.6 million. That's a big number, yo. The very definition of being trafficked as a human being, that you're a slave, I mean, isn't that the foundational truth of the situation? That if you were being trafficked, you're a slave, essentially? So let me get this straight. The left goes on endlessly. Endless fucking lee about slavery 150 fucking years ago. And all these people who were slaves are now dead. Black people are getting into Harvard because they're black. Affirmative action, plus 250 points on their fucking SATs. And somehow that's the biggest problem of the day. Meanwhile, these 28 million people a year at any given time that are slaves, I'd actually have to do something about that. If I actually supported attacking this real world problem, I'd have to do something. I'd have to back my words up with action, yo. I can't be bothered. I'm just going to elect for cheap virtue as opposed to actual virtue. Yeah. My ass is too lazy to embrace any real problems that would, require me to do something other than walk around and hold a sign and, attack some conservative dude saying he supports, pro-life with me and 10 of my friends. Beat him up, kill him. He don't want to kill babies. Yeah, you're brave then. You're willing to act then, right? Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't sound like a conspiracy theory to me. And given how the government tends to underestimate things and underreport crime stats, I'd reckon that you could safely add, what do you think, 10% under that number? And you'd be closer to the ballpark in regards to what the actual number is. I mean, even if you accept this at face value, 27 million people at any given time, how the fuck is that a conspiracy? That's a larger number than the population of some countries. Are there even 27 million people in Iraq? Well, not anymore. You could just obliterate the entire population of Iraq and it still wouldn't match this fucking number. Oh, right, putting resources into human trafficking and focusing on that in any way, that goes counter to the left's goals. Yeah, so much for their moral superiority. Anyway, the International Labor Organization and the Walk Free Foundation, in partnership with the International Organization for Migration, released global estimates of modern slavery in September 2022. This report estimates that in any given time this is from 2021, so it's gotten worse by 2023, especially with Biden in power, where he loves to ignore crime, and lefties love to ignore crime because, if you're a criminal, you're obviously an oppressed minority, unless you're white. Approximately 27.6 million people were in forced labor. Slavery. Of these, 17.3 million are exploited in the private sector. A lot of these are in China, by the way. Yeah. But they're commies, though. They're supporting our agenda, so we're going to ignore that problem. Yeah, of course you are, lefties. 6.3 million in forced commercial sexual exploitation. Does that sound like a small number? And 3.9 million in forced labor imposed by the state. Did that many people even supposedly die from COVID in 2020 and 2021? Yeah, but that's death. At least these sex slaves are still alive. So it's not a real problem. The definition of forced labor used in this report is based on ILO Forced Labor Convention from 1930, which states in Article 2.1 that forced labor is all work or service which is exacted from any person under the menace of a penalty for which the said person has not offered himself or herself voluntarily. This report also estimates that 49.6 million people are in modern slavery at any given time. So tack on another 23 million. So people who are not being trafficked, but are just run-of-the-mill average slaves. So, rounded up, 50 million people worldwide, globally, are enslaved right now. But that's not a real problem. But those 3 million black people that were in the South in 1863, we need to worry about that big time. Okay. 49.6 million slaves at any given time. And that's 2021. But this figure includes both the estimate for forced labor and forced marriage, which the left would most definitely call slavery. They call marriage without the non-consent part slavery. All marriage is slavery if you're a lefty, because if you're a lefty, you're a feminist. And they do hate that marriage. Anyway, that sounds like a global issue to me. See, but it's not helpful. It's not helpful to promoting the fight against climate change, nor does fighting such issues advance the LGBTQ mafia's agenda. So I think we can safely say in summation that the reasons for the left attacking this movie with such ferocity are as follows. Number one, the movie portrays men in a positive light. It portrays men in a positive fatherly role, one which contradicts the left's anti-male, I don't need no man, men are evil and responsible for all the woes in the world narrative. Most especially white males. Number two, movie has a white male lead, which directly contradicts the white male evil, bad narrative and shows a white male in a positive light. Can't have that. I mean, if he'd have been portrayed as a villain, that's fine. But portrayed as a singular hero? No. White people in movies, they gotta be the bad guys. Or bumbling oafs. Especially if they're male. Oh, number three. It talks about a very real, actual issue that exists on a global scale that these people on the left have ignored. So if it's a real issue, and they've been remiss, meaning those on the left, and they failed to address this issue, this very real issue, then it can't be an issue, right? Otherwise, they would have addressed it, right? You see, that being the case, people on the left don't want to admit that they failed and that they're not morally superior, that they're not virtuous. They don't want to address the issue with the gravitas it actually deserves, so instead they attack it and call it a QAnon conspiracy theory. Otherwise, they failed and they have no moral high ground. Number 4, addressing it takes attention away from their other non-issues that they push, non-issues that are designed to divide people along identity lines. Number 5, it's an actual problem that exists everywhere, and it would create unity where there is now division, and it's an issue that crosses racial, ethnic, national, and socio-economic lines. Can't push that! Number 6, it taps into the male desire to protect and provide, giving men a positive male role model. And men, we're not allowed to have those. You know, that thing that the left keeps claiming is required, that it's required that people see themselves in a particular role for those people that take on that role in their own lives. Of course, this only applies to, supposed oppressed minorities, the institutionally disempowered like black people and gays. See, white people, they're too powerful. They're too powerful to get a positive role model, positive representation in movies. If we allow them to have that, they'll continue to be white supremacists. Because, we got to disempower them so that the easily controlled black and brown minorities can take control. Yeah. You see, can't portray Whitey in a positive light. If we portray Whitey in a positive light, he might gain some self-esteem and in turn fight back against having his country stolen from him and his identity further tarnished by the leftist scum. Can't have him fighting back. Number 7, it takes away from the left's ability to claim and or believe in their own moral superiority or have others believe in their moral superiority if they acknowledge that this is a problem. As no one who has moral superiority and virtue could possibly ignore such an issue, if it were an issue, that is. So, of course, it must not be an issue, and therefore it's bunk. If you haven't figured it out yet, the vast majority of leftists are leftists because of an intense desire for meaning in their lives. And they have a deep lack of knowledge in regards to how to go about getting said meaning. They also have a desire to defend what is now giving their lives meaning. The ability to feel superior and get cheap, easily purchased virtue. Hell, it's free virtue, really. They don't have to do anything except beat up one guy in groups of 10 or 20 wearing Antifa masks. Excuse me, they're just masks that all Antifa people wear because they're cowards. And, they want the cheap virtue. And so they have a desire to defend that cheap virtue and that feeling of superiority. And of course, the biggest reason is that the movie, it shifts focus away from the climate change fear porn that they've been pushing for decades and the oppression Olympics of the supposed weak minorities. And instead, it focuses your attention on something very real that is a real problem. And something that's very real and very tangible, and in turn, focusing on real problems that are close to home and exist on a global scale. It would shift your focus too much from their faux problems that they bandy about so as to control you through fear. And if that happens, people might start to see other real problems that exist in the world as well and pay attention to those. And doing so might give them some perspective, enough perspective to recognize that the problems they're being told are problems and that they should be concerned about aren't really actual problems at all. It's just their global elite handlers trying to control them. Nothing more. Can't have that. So there you go. There's my breakdown of why the left is attacking the sound of freedom. So let me know what you think in the comment section. And please like and subscribe to my BitChute channel if you have not already. bitchute.com/The Realist Philosopher. That's bitchute.com/The Realist Philosopher. And let me know what you think.